Hello, Alison. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to have you. So, yeah, you're a referral through Philip Mantle, who we've not actually had on the podcast yet, but we will be doing an episode with him very, very soon. Yeah, so he sent us over some of your information. We've checked out your book, and I mean, to start off with, I really just need to jump into something which we've read in your bio, which just piqued our interest straight away. As soon as Aaron jumped on as well, he was like, "Have you read this part of the bio?" And I was like, "Yep, we need to go for it." So in there, you've put your supernatural journey was over the precognitive visions prophesized 9/11, the Paris attacks of 2015, and so on and so forth, with some other quite disturbing things. But could you go into a bit more of what happened for you there and what this experience was for you?
Well, the first time that I had any kind of sense that something was going to happen was back in the 1990s. I was on dialysis at the time, and I just knew that there was something about New York and there was something about Paris, and it was just a feeling that I had, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know where the information was coming from. And it wasn't until maybe like 3 months before 9/11, I would find myself just staring out the window and seeing like a plane coming through the window and thinking, I wouldn't stand a chance if a plane were to come through my window. And then thinking, that that was a really strange thought. Why am I thinking something like that? And then as I say, I would find myself like I stayed in a high-rise flat at the time, and I'd find myself looking out over the city and looking at other high-rise flats and thinking the same thought, and then catching myself thinking this thought and thinking, why am I thinking these things? This is a really strange thing to think. Obviously, I'm thinking some really dark thoughts. I don't know why. And then, and then it happened 3 months later, and I realized when I saw it that this was what I had been seeing. And it was the most awful feeling. It was the most awful thing that I'd ever seen. And you're thinking like, could I have said to somebody? Who would I have said to? Who would have believed me? I didn't even know that this was a precognition um, in the first place. So there was really nothing that I could have done. I was all really quite confused about how I felt about the whole thing. And then moved to a number of years later, and I was in a different flat at this point, and I was on my laptop, and suddenly I just sort of looked out the window, and I knew that this was in my mind's eye, but I just saw this bullet-shaped bomb coming through the window, and I thought, okay, this could be precognition because I had looked into it by that point. Tune into it, see what you can get. And so I started seeing like a domed city. Saw domes in a city. And I even saw like the color, this sort of pale blue color, but I associated it with Rome. And then I thought, oh, what is it? Is the Pope going to be assassinated? So I put my own thoughts into it instead of just waiting. And right in front of me was two pictures of Paris. One was the Sacre-Cœur, which is a domed church, and the other was the Eiffel Tower. They were right across from me, and I never even gave it a second thought. But it was the next day that the Paris attack happened, and again, as I say, I didn't know what I was seeing or how long. There was no indication of length of time or anything like that. So, but the thing is, you don't know who you can tell. First of all, like if you say something and you're wrong, then you look kind of foolish.
Yeah, then you look crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then people say, well, if she got that wrong, what else has she got wrong? And
Yeah.
what else has just been pure chance? Um,
Well, then on the flip side as well, if you're right, then people are going to question you in a different way and still think that because there's all the conspiracies around all of this stuff, they're going to be like,
yeah,
you might have had
yeah.
it in on what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's that as well. I mean, that's what happened with was it Helen Duncan, the Scottish medium, and she saw the I think it was a ship that went down, and she was able to tell a woman in the room that, I'm sorry, your son has just drowned. And this was during the war. And when this got back to the authorities, she was arrested because they thought she was a spy and that she had known this information, and this was just stuff that she said, as I say, I've just seen your son. He's come through to me and he's just been killed. Um, so yeah, so I mean, you say things that are like precognitive, and as you say, like people could say like, oh, was she in on 9/11? Was she in on the Paris attacks? Um, so you have to be careful what you say and who you say it to.
It seems like it can be having them sort of thoughts. I guess with anyone having any thoughts, but them ones in particular, it must feel quite, I don't know, lonely to have them thoughts because, as we've just discussed, then no one's going to trust you either way, before or after. So you're kind of stuck on your own until you find a group and a community, which I'm sure you have done now. But at the first sort of time it happened, you would have had no one that could even discuss that with on even your closest friend or a closest family member.
Yeah. I mean, I did say to one girl, um, back when I just had the words Paris and New York. And I did say to her, there's something's going to happen in Paris and New York. And I don't really want to visit either of them until this has happened, but I don't know what it is. And it's just a feeling. And she said, well, what kind of feeling? And I said, I don't know. I can't put it into words. And I don't know, am I seeing the word Paris and like the words Paris and New York or in my mind's eye, or am I what is it was just, or is it like in my mind's ear? Is it is that what it is? I'm not actually hearing anything, I'm not actually seeing anything. And when you've not really when you don't consider yourself to be psychic, it's really strange when thoughts pop into your head and you don't know where they've come from. And you can't trust that it's your thoughts. If it's just your because we have a lot of random thoughts in a day, and some of them are really strange thoughts, really random thoughts. But occasionally you will know that there's something just a bit more bizarre about something that you're thinking. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this because it probably shouldn't get political, but I had a nightmare that Donald Trump was going to be president before he became president. I told one of my friends. who is a psychic. I said Donald Trump's going to be the next president. I had a bad dream about it. I can't remember anything about the dream.
Was this before he was even running for president?
No, no, he was running. It was maybe about, I would say it was maybe about 6 months before, something like that. And I said to a friend, that's what I dreamt.
Have you gotten better at being able to distinguish what are just your normal thoughts and what are sort of precognitive thoughts?
That's the thing, and and a lot of people ask that, but how do you know? How do you distinguish? They're asking it for themselves. Like people in my husband's got a development circle. He's a psychic medium, and people ask him all the time, but how do I know if that's like my own thoughts? And he just says you have to trust them. If you get a thought, you just have to trust it.
So I've been in situations, I guess, with work life or something where I'm talking to someone. It might be about taking on a new client, and I'll just have like a gut feeling like I don't think we're going to align. It's not going to work out. And sometimes I just think, do you know what? Let's just go for it. It's a bit of extra cash, and then believe it or not, it doesn't work out. Is it similar to that, but on obviously a wider scale?
I think so. I think it is similar to that. I think if you see something and you just have a gut feeling that, I just had a gut feeling that there was something important about Paris and New York. But I didn't, when I saw the planes crashing, I wasn't thinking New York. That's the thing. I hadn't put the two things together. I got the information separately. And so I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know it was a precognition. And second of all, I didn't know where it would, if I had thought, oh, this is a precognition, I didn't know where, so it was only it's only in hindsight. And quite often it's only in hindsight, I think.
Do you think everyone has this sort of has the ability to do this some way or another? And I'm asking because me and Aaron are brothers. When we were younger, obviously we used to live together. And I remember once I had a dream that he bought a scratch card and he won a lot of money. I don't know if I had the dream that he won a lot of money or if I had a dream and he won the exact amount of money which he went on then to win. I woke up and I was like, you need to go buy a scratch card today because I've had this dream. And he bought one and scratched it off and he had won that amount of money. Um, is it something you believe everyone has and you can, I guess, in a sense, train it to or allow it to get better? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody has this ability, and some people find it easier than others. Some people, they don't really want to have anything to do with psychic abilities, but just occasionally they'll get a flash of something, um, even though they don't really want to have anything to do with it. I think most of the time I go around like being in the here and now. And so I really have to sit down and focus my mind and meditate and have silence to do any kind of psychic work. But now and again, it just something will pop in, something will happen. Um, Maybe I'm just watching TV. But then sometimes when you're watching TV, you're kind of switched off then. So I think the key is to switch off. And things like, I don't know if you've heard of rescue work, but it's when you encounter a spirit, uh, and they need to be helped over to the other side. And with me, it's quite often been children. And I've just been sitting in my living room watching something, and the next thing, several children will walk into my living room, spirit children, I mean, and they'll be sort of confused about where they are. And at that point, what you have to do is visualize for them, create a door. So you just say to them, let's see that door over there. If you go through that door, there is someone waiting for you on the other side. And you can sort of ask the angels to come through and help and take the people, the children through. That's happened with me quite a few times. I know it's happened with my husband as well. And these are just quite random. You're not expecting that to happen. It's not like, if you're sitting in a development circle, you're going out of your way to open up and ask for messages. It's different. But I think everybody, it can happen to anyone. Maybe there are people who are a bit more attuned, who are a bit more, particularly I think people who have illness in their life or are very young. I don't know what age you were when you dreamt about the scratch card, but I think children can be very aware. And as I say, I think I've had a lot of illness in my life, and I've had 2 kidney transplants, and the one of the times when I was really ill was when I actually got the information about the Paris in New York, was when I was on dialysis. I think that you're closer to the other side at that point. And the same happened when the second time I had kidney failure, but I had a sort of it was like a preemptive kidney transplant. Before I had that, as my kidney function got lower, my my ability to see things increased. So again, my thinking is that it was probably because I was closer to the other side.
Yeah. So with because if say you were, well, I think I was, or must have been over 16, right? If we were buying scratch cards. So I would have been around that age. But if you're in your teenage years and something supernatural goes on where you do see something, will it be more out of fear that people just try and dismiss it and therefore stop seeing it? And if you were to sort of accept it a little bit more and look into it a bit more with a bit more of an open mind, because I'm guessing from your journey, you've opened your mind up a lot to be able to get to the level that you're at. Because I know, myself included, if I had a vision where I saw several children in my room, I probably would have had a panic attack because it would have scared the living life out of me. So, is that what you've done? Have you sort of trained yourself to be able to get to the level that you're at today?
I guess so. I mean, a lot of time has gone by and I've done a lot of different things. And I haven't, maybe if I had focused on mediumship with my life, I would have been an awful lot better, and have things happening every day. But yeah, I think it's likely that if you train, then you will see much more. You will get much more. than if you see something supernatural and you get frightened and you don't want any communication whatsoever. Then you can effectively be closing yourself down. You know, you're sort of closing your third eye. My mother is probably a good example of that. She was always extremely tuned in. She would, I would go, you know, you hear this phrase, very psychic. You know, she was very psychic. I suppose that's the best way to describe it, but she was very in tune. And she had no interest in developing it whatsoever. In fact, she wasn't much of a believer. She only really took it on board a bit because I was interested in it. But when I was younger, most of the time it was just, you know, eye rolls. Oh, whatever, you know, I don't really believe in anything like that. And then she would come out with some really profound stuff, and you'd go, you know, do you realize what you've just said there? You know, so
how old were you when you had your first supernatural experience or psychic experience?
let me think now. Well, probably the first thing that I can remember is my grandparents have their wedding picture, and it's in it's within a mirror. I don't know if you've ever seen these pictures before. They're very beautiful, and it's a black and white picture, but it's been colorized. And it's been embedded into a mirror. I've got no idea how they do it. And my grandparents gave it to my mum, and she put it in my bedroom. And I was looking at it really closely one day, and as I was looking at it, I heard breathing in my ear. And I bolted down the stairs. I mean, I think I was about 12 or something like that. I bolted down the stairs, screaming. So I suppose that was the first thing that happened. And then I was about, I think 16 maybe, when I decided I'm going to go along to that spiritualist church and see what happens. And my parents were okay with that. They were absolutely fine with that. I was brought up in a Protestant family, but there was no pressure to be anything. And they said fine, and then they were interested to hear, you know, what was said at the meeting when I came back. And I did get a message from I think that one was from Robert, who was sending me roses from France. And my dad went upstairs and he brought down this gorgeous little postcard that had it was like tapestry in roses, and it was from my great grandfather Robert Dunlop to my great grandmother and their son. So I suppose that was Robert sending roses from France. I'd never seen that postcard before, so I didn't know about it. So yeah, but for me personally, apart from that, when I was like 12, which I don't really include, I don't think. I probably should, but I don't really include it in things that I've experienced, because I think probably the first thing after that was after a friend had died. I worked beside him, and he had been killed in a lorry accident. And the night after his funeral, I woke up and there was this like projector screen lifted from the foot of the bed, and I saw the whole accident. I saw what had happened. And then there was like an archway and a silhouette of a person who could have been him. I don't know though, but sort of standing, just the silhouette standing within this archway and it was reflected on the wall. So that was probably the first thing that really had happened, and that I was in my early 20s when that happened. I was also in my early 20s when the medium transfigured into my uncle, and it was my uncle that I saw standing there. And there was no red light, the sort of the old Victorian thing of being like under a red light and seeing like different faces manifest. There wasn't a red light, but he started walking like him and he took on the facial appearance of him. So it was as though my uncle had just walked right through him. So I was in my early 20s when that happened as well.
And did you say you went to the spiritual church when you were 16?
Yeah, I think the first time I was about 16. Yeah.
So going off the timelines, I've also got that about the UFO plasma light, which you saw. Where in the timeline does that come into it?
I was in my late 20s when that happened. And so it wasn't me that saw the plasma light. That was somebody else that saw it independently. But what I'd experienced was an incubus attack, which is a night demon. And I woke up with this demon on top of me saying, "You thought you could get away from me, didn't you?" And he was like scraping, trying to cut my throat with his fingernail. And the room had this sort of bluish shade, this sort of strange bluish shade. And over in the corner was an old woman that many refer to as the Mara, where we get the word nightmare from. And she was sort of laughing into her hand. I went on like for years thinking that was some like a demonic thing, and still do. I mean, I don't know that I think it's anything else, but it was 14 years later when somebody told me, or showed me, this photograph, this photoshopped photograph of what they had seen, and it was this blue plasma light that had imploded. And they had seen it the same month as my attack. And when they showed me the photograph, it was above my flat. So with the fact that it was a blue light and I saw a blue light and they saw this blue sort of plasma ball that just and was gone, it makes sense that it was probably the same thing. That certainly one thing caused the other thing, or it was something that perhaps a portal that was utilized by something demonic.
Have you done much research into this following that experience?
Into incubus and succubus, yeah. Yeah. There's various things like strange things like people when they have their windows open tend to experience this. So there was sites that told you what to do to avoid experiences like that. So things like keep your window closed, keep some light music on in the background, keep a light on, like a dim light on. Get enough sleep, because insomnia can produce sleep paralysis, which was a part of it, and can cause these effects. I mean, this is the thing. We know about sleep paralysis, and we know that when people hallucinate, the definition of a hallucination is something that somebody else can't see. They automatically think that that means it's not real. Just because they can't see it doesn't mean that it's not real. There was a story came up just the other day on the ASAP page, and it was a story, and you might have read it, I think it's on Wales Online, about a man who sued the NHS, got £700, I think, for hallucinations that were induced by taking the drug prednisolone, which is a steroid. And it caused him to see a bear and a burglar, a man running over the garage. And I said to my husband, well, that's it. I'm on prednisolone. My book, just throw it in the bin, it's all to do with prednisolone now. And I said to him, like, what if those that people deem to be hallucinations, what if there was a bear there? What if there was a man jumping over the garage, but in spirit form? What is the difference between a hallucination and what you see psychically? And can medication allow you to like open up your psychic awareness?
Right, so different vehicles to the same.
Exactly. I mean, shamans use drugs to alter their state of consciousness to allow them to see into other realms and observe things psychically. Why can't our sort of modern day drugs be having the same effect, but it's just more comfortable for everybody to call it a hallucination?
Well, it's the same thing as writing something off as crazy, right? Or you're just hallucinating. It's just a side effect. It's your imagination running wild. It's the exact same thing. So what are these portals that are opening? Like, for example, the one that opened above your place. Why are demons coming through?
I think that demons are attracted to situations like in my case, the person that I was with was going through a really tough time. It just come out that he'd been abused, and that, when you're seeing somebody going through that, you're being traumatized as well by this. And that whole trauma and the difficulties within the relationship can attract things. Anything like that can attract darker things. I mean, child abuse is a really dark thing. you know, it's full, the whole thing is full of negative energy, and many people would even refer to it as evil. That is going to attract, that energy is going to attract something. And quite often it is people who have been abused that will experience certain things like possession, maybe. I've not been abused, but it was like it was because my fiance, you know, it was through that. But it's the same environment. You're in the same environment as them. You're as I say, you're being traumatized at the same time by this, and that creates a lot of negativity. And where there's that negativity, demons, they have their own personalities and characteristics, and they will be drawn to situations that reflect their own personalities and characteristics. So the incubus is usually associated with rape and sexual. It's usually a sexual thing. It wasn't with me. It wasn't that. It can also be a murderous intent, and it was a murderous intent that was there. But there are all sorts of demons who will affect people in all sorts of ways. You know, like there's all sorts of classifications and levels of demonic entities, just as there are angelic denomination, you know.
So can us as like humans? I ask this question because there's a lot of sort of high profile people in the press at the moment and in the past that have getting in trouble for paedophilia and child abuse. Are these people using demonic energy to make them more powerful? Is that a possibility?
It's certainly a possibility. It's also a possibility that there are some cases where people are actually possessed, and crimes are carried out, whether it's a paedophile or whether it's a murderer. What I'm trying to think, the name of the guy is this the Son of Sam case, the killer, and he said that he had been possessed. He had been fooling around with Satanism. He had been in a satanic cult, but he said that he had become possessed, and it was through that possession that had then led him to go out and shoot several people. And he went on to have this huge conversion, and when he was in jail, as soon as he was in jail, the demon sort of left him alone because the purpose had been served. He wasn't of any more use to the demon, so the demon left him, and there he is, like thinking, what have I done? And many years later, he discovered Christianity, and he didn't expect to be forgiven by anyone else, but he knew that Christ forgave him, and that was enough for him. So I have been very interested in that notion that some killers, maybe serial killers or paedophiles, may be possessed by a demonic entity, but they have still invited that demonic entity in in some way, somehow, they have invited it in.
Well, could that be done by accident as well? Because there's the theory, for example, if someone's suffering from depression and they're getting some deep dark thoughts, there's that one where if they're driving on the motorway, for example, they're looking at the opposite side of the road, thinking, I could just put my car on that side of the road. That's obviously like different to harming other people. In a way, it does not harm other people. But is that a form of letting it in if you start, I don't know, sort of like just enjoying them thoughts a bit or fantasizing about them thoughts a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of demons out there who will take advantage of that. It's what you might call, or what I call, a chink in the armor, a chink in your spiritual armor. And they will find a way in if they can find a way in. And as you say, like, if you like allow that dark thought to be taken seriously, there might just be a passing demon going, aha, they're thinking this. Maybe I could put some more notions into their head, lead them further away from God as much as possible, you know?
Yeah, it's low hanging fruit for them in that sense.
Yeah, yeah.
What about? I know you've in your bio as well. There was that you had cognitive visions of the priests and the sort of behavior that they were doing. What
Yeah.
if they're? I mean, the first question before you go on to how that experience came about is if these priests are really close to God, so how would you say the demons managed to get into someone in that position?
Well, I mean, what greater victory for a demon than to corrupt a priest, first of all. Second of all, I don't believe that priests should not be allowed to marry. I think they should be allowed to marry. Whether male or female, that's besides the point. I have got no problem with men and women of either sex marrying either sex. That's obviously very, very much against the Catholic faith, but nevertheless, it denies the natural instinct, the natural feelings that people have. And when they can't express those feelings, and quite often it will be like a priest has gone into the priesthood because he doesn't want to get married to a woman, and he can't express his perhaps homosexuality. And that suppression of sexual tendencies, I think, can lead to a darkness. It can lead to negative thoughts, and take you, down a rabbit hole that you can't get back out of. And I mean, Gabriele Amort, the Pope's exorcist, he's now deceased, but he said the devil is in the Vatican. And I think he was referring to the paedophile priest phenomenon, if you want to call it that, because I think that is one way that demons can get in, is any kind of suppression that leads to dark thoughts. And for me, they should be allowed to marry.
That's a really good point. I didn't look at it. I've never looked at it that way because, for example, if someone's in a rut, just a general rut where they get out of bed late, they're not really doing much with their life. They're kind of like things just spiral worse and worse for them because they're suppressed in their own rut, and it's because of where they've put themselves and what they're allowing into like themselves is just negative energies of this rut. And it's the same thing in many, many different forms. One of them being the priest, because they do have that sort of sexual tension building up inside them. They're obviously going to get very depressed and negative thoughts, and it's an as you mentioned earlier about the person driving on the motorway. It's just a little opening for demons to come into.
Absolutely, and I mean, I mentioned homosexuality there, but I mean, there's plenty of straight priests as well, who their paedophilic tendencies have been towards girls. So it's not that was not me meaning to say that every paedophile priest is gay. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I think that is a danger. And I think it should have been long ago recognised by the Catholic Church, and something done about it.
What's the belief behind why priests aren't allowed to marry?
Well, they used to be allowed to marry,
I thought so, yeah.
but then there was like it went from like I think father to son. The son would go into the priesthood as well, and then I think there was like a bit of like corruption through that, and so through families and sort of power hungry, blah blah blah, and then they weren't allowed to marry at some point along the way. That I'm just saying that from like something I read long ago, so there will be other reasons.
Kind of makes sense though when you look at some of the way it's organized, that they're trying to trying to control it the best way possible is to
Yeah.
alleviate something along those lines.
Yeah, but the Orthodox Church, they're allowed to
Yeah.
marry. Yeah.
What were your precognitive visions for the priest scandal?
Well, the first thing that happened was the first time that when I was on dialysis, and I had this vision, well, I had this dream about a priest, an older priest. He's walking towards me saying the Lord's Prayer. And as he was walking towards me, his arms were coming up like this, like Dracula. And that's what it was like. His arms were coming up like this. And he got really close, but the more he was saying it, his face was changing into something evil, the more that he was saying the Lord's Prayer. And when he got right up to me, that was when I opened my eyes in sort of terror and jumped, and right in front of me there was an angel, and it just faded off into the corner of the room. But it also had its arms outstretched like that, but it was shining white, and it just faded back. So I didn't really know what that meant, and it confused me because I wasn't brought up Roman Catholic. I wasn't at that point a Christian. I had no sort of leanings towards religion particularly. So it just really kind of, what was that about? And then I remember being in the Vatican in St. Peter's with my mum, and we'd gone up to the dome, and no sooner had I got up there and I was looking out from the dome, I suddenly got this really awful feeling, just a really bad feeling that made me feel really quite sick and panicky, really panicky. And I had to get out. I just had to get out, and I said to my mum, I need to get out. And I've never behaved like that before. You know, she'd never seen me behaving like that before. You know, because I'm not somebody that gets panicky or gets anxious or anything like that. But I just felt like I need to get out. I need to get out. It was almost like there was something was like whether inside me was saying, get out, you know, it was so strong. So that was one of the other things. I'm trying to think now, there was something else. While we're talking, I'll have a look in my book and see what the other thing was. Because I'm sure there was three things.
So I've got a question. You found it more challenging to categorize angels, aliens, demons, and gods. What do you mean by you find it challenging to categorize these?
Um, this was when I saw what other people describe as or call the Pleiadians. And I woke up with this circle on the ceiling above me, and it was like a platform. And there was a beam of light going to my head, and I was being lifted up off my pillow, and but just like the shoulders, not my legs, just my shoulders. And there was this man looking down at me, and as soon as he saw that I was looking at him, he turned to someone else that I couldn't see and said, "We've got her." And other beings, I mean, they were human looking, looked down, and one of them reached down to me and said, "You have to tell people about us." And I said, "I will." You know, I mean, I was absolutely like all the emotions, terrified, in awe, excited, elated. Um, and he said, "No, you must promise that you will tell people about us." And I said, I promise I will. Now, afterwards, I thought, in one hand, they looked what you might call alien because of what they were wearing. It was kind of spacey, like Star Trek-y sort of uniform. But there was also something angelic about them. And I couldn't quite make up my mind. Had I seen angels or aliens or gods? Because part of my background is also in paganism. I'm not really a polytheist. I wouldn't say I was a polytheist, but because I was involved a lot in the pagan community, polytheism was a subject that came up a lot. So I wasn't sure, and I decided to do a bit of research into, first of all, angels. Or there was another aspect to that, is finding a picture of the Annunciation, where Gabriel is telling Mary the news that she's going to have the Son of God. And you'll see in these paintings that there's a beam of light going to Mary's forehead. In one of them, the light was coming from a circular thing in the sky. And it can either be a dove, which represents the Holy Spirit, or it sometimes is Gabriel. So that put Gabriel into my head, and the being that spoke to me, I now call Gabriel. I've just named him Gabriel. Whether it is or not, I don't know, but I've named him Gabriel. But I looked into, so I thought, well, he's the messenger angel. Who is the messenger god? So I looked into the god Hermes. He's the Greek messenger god. And because I was studying classics, or because I had a degree in classics, I'd finished studying by that point, but because my degree's in classics, I looked to the Greek mythology. And I saw that in Hermes' lineage, his mother is Maya, and Maya is one of the seven sisters. And the seven sisters is the star system, the Pleiades. And now, whether that's a massive leap or not, I don't know, but these beings that other people have also seen, because I looked into like pictures and decided, yeah, they look most like these Palladians who are supposed to come from Pleiades. So I don't know. There seems to be some connection with the Pleiades as well. So that was why I wasn't sure. There was definitely seemed to be some connection between angels and gods. But there's also this connection with aliens, because, well, they're certainly extraterrestrial. Anything that's not of this earth, and they were not of this earth, you have to define as extraterrestrial. So maybe rather than using the word alien, because that can have several connotations, maybe it would be better to call them extraterrestrials. So yeah, I think that that was what I meant by not finding it difficult to distinguish between those things. That was what I meant.
Yeah, the theory is, well, one of the theories of these UFOs sightings is, I've heard angel. Well, the one that I've heard recently is that they are angels. They're classing them as angels, probably because of similar experiences to what you've just discussed.
Maybe I've not read anything else about that from anyone else, but I'd be interested to do that.
I'll send you over what I've been watching on it, because it is really interesting stuff,
Oh yeah, that
and
would
you
be
might relate
great.
to it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be good.
Do
Yeah.
you, with sort of the way the world is at the moment, a bit there's quite a few questions being raised around, like, the devil is returning and there's a lot of evil that's going on. Dark forces are taking over. How much of that actually has substance, and how much of it is sort of just sort of people saying stuff to create fear?
I think that there has been an increase in negativity in the world. I think there has been an increase in cases of possession. And I mean, bad things have always happened in the world. We just, I suppose, because of media, we see it now, and it appears like that we've never lived in such evil times. And maybe that's just because we're only just seeing it now. But nevertheless, those images, those thoughts, that knowledge of evil is also creating that more negative energy.
Yeah, so from that sense, the internet and the way we are super connected at the moment is causing a knock-on effect, which is opening them doors. Because I'm reading about something that's happened on the other side of the world, which is negative, and it's putting me or anyone else in a negative mindset, which is then opening the door for the negativity and for
Yeah, I mean, I think about that, even me telling people about my experiences, when they've, they've never maybe heard of demons before, and all of a sudden I'm introducing them to this world of demons by telling them about my experiences. And that's a yeah.
yeah, because it's
It
like
it kind
ignorance
of
is bliss from their point of view. I didn't know about them; they don't exist in their head minds, and now that does.
Like one thing you mentioned before about leaving your window open, because in summer, obviously, I leave my bedroom window open at night. Now I feel like I'm gonna have that in mind, so I'm not gonna leave a window open.
I know.
If I did, I might be thinking about demons being attracting demons, and that might attract demons to me if I'm thinking about attracting demons.
And then the knock-on effect is you'll tell your partner, "Oh, I'm closing the window," when your partner's super hot, and then they'll be like, "Why?" And you'll be like, "To stop the demons from coming in." So
And they'll want to lock you up.
yeah.
But the what do you call it? In I don't know. It's probably Iran. I can't remember now, but um, in the Middle East somewhere anyway. They used to have little statues of Pazuzu, who was the demon in The Exorcist. And he was thought to be such a powerful demon that he could keep other demons away. And they would put them like above the doors, and they would close windows to stop demons from getting in. So maybe that's where that notion comes from.
Mm, yeah. So you currently do exorcisms, right?
Yes.
What how do you get into a position where you can start doing that sort of thing?
Um, well, if somebody approaches you and says that they're possessed, and you believe them, then I'm not quite sure how to answer this really. I usually somebody who would carry out an exorcism would be a Catholic priest. That's in this society. That's who is thought of. And I know somebody who had a Catholic priest come to her, and all he said was to get rid of all the Buddhas in her house. Okay, that was it. That was all the words of help that he gave her. She then went to a Church of Scotland minister. The Church of Scotland, they do have a protocol, but this minister who I've met, and he's lovely, but they've got no idea what to do. They just didn't know what to do. I was the first person who actually said I would help her. An exorcism is a form of healing. So I've been doing healing for a long time, since I was in my 20s. like, you know, hands-on or Reiki. I've been doing all that. To do an exorcism, there's a checklist that the Catholic Church has, and it's good advice. It's good advice. There's certain things that tell you that a person is possessed, like speaking in a different language, like levitating, certain like paranormal events happening. Well, this lady's demon would only come out to play when she was alone. So how can you prove to somebody that things are happening? You know, she'll be waking up, being beaten up by this demon daily, beaten up and raped by this demon. And the first exorcism, what I did was I had a copy of the Rituale Romanum, which is the Roman ritual of exorcism. And I went through the whole, I had two other people there with me. It's, you don't want to go alone. So I went with two other people. And I went through the whole ritual. I mean, it took the entire day with a break in between. It was long. And part of it was got some information from part of it. But the problem is that the lady was unable to switch her own mind off, and she was like in quite a state of anxiety. The second exorcism that I did, the demon manifested, and it gave me its name, and it made sense that it was who it said it was. And then there's a point in the exorcism where you know that the person is, you know, it's almost like a gagging response. And you know that they're at the point of expelling the demon, and you just have to encourage them to do that. And she expelled the demon, and felt wonderful afterwards. The sensations that she'd had, they were all gone. Now, that's an ongoing process with this lady. I'm still working with her. But the demon did leave her.
Do you have to keep working?
Back.
Do you have to keep working with her to stop it from coming back to her?
I have to keep. I mean, it was back within a couple of days. So I have to try and find a way of making sure that it never comes back.
Yeah, the door's firmly shut.
The door is firmly shut. I think there might be a couple of reasons why it's not firmly shut, but I mean, I can't talk about everything with that case, but I mean, I got involved from, I suppose, doing an exorcism within my own house rather than, it wasn't with a person at that point. It was in my own house, in my own flat. And it was something that somebody left there. You know, somebody came in, I got a funny feeling about him when he was gone. I still felt like there was somebody in the house, although there wasn't. And strange things started happening. Eventually, I was getting attacked by some force. There was scratching in the wall. The walls were shaking. The shelves were shaking. The bed was shaking, you know. And eventually I decided I would do an exorcism. And I had the ritual to do that, and that it worked really effectively. And at the end of the exorcism, like that night or the next night, I heard the sound of like like the sound that hailstones makes on glass, millions of hailstones on my ceiling. And my cats were looking up at it as well. What's this? This went on for a minute or two. And that I later read in a book called Begone Satan. Everything that had happened is by a guy called Carl Vogel. Everything that had happened in that case, and I think it's the case of Anna Eklund. A film's been made. It's not that great a film, but a film's been made about it. But in that case, everything that the priest said happened to him happened to me. The scratching in the wall, the wall shaking, this attack by the invisible force, and ultimately the sound of hailstones on the ceiling, which marks, apparently, and I didn't know what it marked because it was only later that I read it, marks the end of the exorcism. It's the energy dissipating and leaving, and your exorcism has worked. And there was just such a change in atmosphere after that. It was so clear. It was so clean, completely different change in atmosphere. So it was after that I thought, well, that worked. I can obviously do exorcisms. But for one reason and another, I felt called to be an exorcist. And when you're called to do something, you just have to do it.
Yeah, right. Or else you won't feel like you're doing what's true to yourself.
Yeah. And Gabriel Amor was never one for he didn't think that you should have to ask permission from anybody to do an exorcism. He also, what was the it's a good quote as well. An unnecessary exorcism never hurt anyone, was one of his quotes. Now, this was a man who'd been an exorcist his entire life, and he died when he was in his 90s. And that was his feeling on the matter. Up until I read that, although I kind of felt that, up until that point, I'd gone along with this notion, oh, you must get a psychiatric report, you must do this, you must do that, you must do the next thing. And when I read that, I thought, I think he's right. I think he's right. I'm justifying myself to people at conferences, because we get skeptics that come to conferences, and they love annoying the people who go there, and they love to pretend that they're on a secret mission and we don't know who they are, but we do know who they are, And I knew who they were, and when they were asking a question, and of course I'm saying, well, I would wait for a psychiatric report, and they're giving it their nod of approval. And I just kind of felt like I was ticking boxes, saying things or going along with that way of doing things, until I read what Gabrielle Amort said, and I thought, he's right. If somebody has, the problem is that sometimes demons will affect somebody who has a psychiatric problem. So their spiritual problem is different from their psychiatric problem. I'm not qualified to treat their psychiatric problem, but I've been given a calling to deal with their spiritual problem. And I shouldn't need anybody's permission to do that, because I've already been given permission by the guy upstairs to do that. So,
would it be more likely that someone with a psychiatric issue is more vulnerable to allowing them in because of the vulnerability?
Yes.
You find if you help someone with a spiritual problem, it also helps a psychiatric problem as well.
I think it's bound to help them feel happier, but it depends what that psychiatric problem is, really. You know, are they depressed because, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are they depressed because they have this demonic problem, and when you alleviate that, they suddenly become happy and cheerful again? Or do they have something like schizophrenia as well as being possessed? And you can take away the possession, but they need medication for the schizophrenia. That's not going to change. So you do kind of want to be working hand in hand with, if they have a psychiatrist. But the woman that I work with, she has seen psychologists, and they've basically sort of written her off and said, there's nothing wrong with you. You know, so they were, that was another avenue that she had gone down where she got no help. So she got no help from the psychologist, she got no help from this church and that church, and she just was at a loss. What can I do?
Well, yeah, in the Western world, if science can't prove it, then it doesn't exist, right? That's what they go by.
That's it. Well, she did say, I think she told them, or she told her doctor, I'm considering having an exorcism. And they said, well, it certainly can't hurt. Go ahead if you want to do that. So she was given the green light by them, because I did ask her, but as I say, my mind has been changed over time about that. You know, if somebody doesn't really need an exorcism, is it okay to do an exorcism anyway? Well, it's probably not going to do any harm. If they have a psychiatric problem, they have a psychiatric problem. And nothing that you do is going to change that. It's not going to make it worse. I think that's the worry with some people, is that they think that if they don't need an exorcism would make it worse. But an exorcism is a form of healing, a form of cleansing, a form of asking asking God, asking Mary, Jesus, the saints, the angels, to take anything, you know, evil from this person.
Do you think horror films have had an impact on how people perceive exorcisms? And do you think people is scared? It's made the word scary. Like the word exorcism is a scary word because of media and movies.
Yeah, the amount of people, if I tell them that I'm an exorcist, go like that to me. And I think, I'm not evil. Why are you doing that to me?
Yeah, you're like the opposite.
I know. I'm the good guy here, you know. But yeah, I think it probably it's definitely how people perceive exorcisms. The Exorcist is not that far from the truth, to be honest. It's really not. Okay, so there's a few dramatic effects thrown in, but it's the exorcism part itself, apart from the spinning head and whatnot, not that far from the truth. there is a like guttural speaking. There is like perhaps the twisting of the body, things like that, writhing. I suppose that certainly verbal attacks, you know, getting told where to go by the entity. It's not hugely different.
What about other forms of entertainment? I mean, there's movies and TV shows about a dark underworld which runs parallel to the world that we live in today.
Like Stranger Things.
Exactly. Exactly what I was thinking.
I know my horror. Yeah, I mean, I think there probably is.
Hmm.
There probably is a darker world running parallel to the world that like you and I live in.
When you mentioned that blue tinge before, the first thing I thought is Stranger Things and what's it called, The Upside Down, because that place has got a little blue tinge to it as well.
It does, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's the portal from one side to the other, is what they've taken. Possibly, but
Yeah.
there's no way of us.
Obviously, that's just a TV program, but that's the first thing I thought in my head.
But these things, I mean, they're created by people who have either spoken to people or have experienced things themselves in order to portray it. So it's quite, you know, likely that the director or the writers have spoken to people.
With some first-hand experience.
Yeah, they'll go around and they'll take bits that they read and put it into the storyline and create something from. I don't think they just pluck it out of thin air, or let's make it kind of blue. And blue was a supernatural color. Certainly in Scotland, it's known as a supernatural color.
So you, as well, you mentioned before that you have some experience with paganism, and you got a circle of friends, right? That pagan is that? Yeah. What have you noticed any similarities with Christianity and paganism, or practices on both that are similar to one another?
Yeah, I mean, the Christianity really stems from a lot of different pagan religions. So there's going to be lots of things there. Like there's a book called The Jesus Mysteries. If you read that, you'll see lots in there. There's also a program called Zeitgeist. You'll get it on YouTube, and that will give you lots of things about ancient religions that Christianity has stemmed from. I don't like to use the word stolen from, because I think there's natural progressions with religions, and you know, it's just that's just been a progression within like the cultural framework of the time. And so there's things like the parallel lives of Dionysus, the god Dionysus, and Jesus. Mother was a virgin, father a god. Born in, I think, a cave. In some stories, Jesus was born in a cave or a stable. And then the crucifixion, I think, with Dionysus, his body was ripped apart. There's various things anyway. I can't think of everything that is in Zeitgeist and in the Jesus mysteries, but there's a lot, and it definitely does stem from. To me, Jesus is a solar deity. Everything about his mythology would suggest that. Everything associated with him revolves around the seasons. In a lot of the hymns, there's talk of, you know, the light coming back into the world, and
Yeah, because I think in the Zeitgeist, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure if it's in the Zeitgeist or I saw it somewhere else. Him being the Son of God is actually reflecting the Son being God.
yeah,
Is that correct?
yeah, that I think that is what it says in it. Although in the church would say that, well, what it is that the sun is a symbol of Jesus, and it's used because it mirrors what Jesus does. I think there's an argument to be made for both sides, probably.
Yeah, because there's Christmas as well, where that's around the winter solstice, the birth of the sun, the longer days.
That's right. That's a great example. Is that the winter solstice is on the 21st, and so that's when the light dies and goes into the underworld for 3 days, and then on the 25th, in the morning of the 25th, that's when the astronomers rather, could see the light coming back, and so that, I mean, that gives you all, if you read any of the hymns, that is the wording, you know, the light coming back, the returning light. It's all focused around that happening. Also, there's astrologically, the belt of Orion, the 3 stars in the belt of Orion, are known as the 3 kings, and they come up first on the horizon, and they're followed by the sun. So it's like, you know, they're traveling, they're followed by the 3 the sun is followed by the 3 kings. There's loads of things like that's the mythological part of the story. Yeah, there's definitely lots of pagan things.
So, what made you go down the Christianity path over the pagan path?
Yeah, that was a surprise to me as well. What made me do it? I suppose I put out the thought that various spiritual beings I could understand them. It was like, you know, the angels had reached out to me. Mary, I had a connection with Mary, but I still couldn't get my head around Jesus. And I put out the thought, you know, could you show yourself to me in a way that I, being a pagan, would understand? And pretty much the next day, that's exactly what happened. it all came together, all this stuff about the sun and the symbolism, and potentially being a solar deity. So that was kind of the first step. And it just sort of went from there, I suppose, with the exorcism in the house. And then meeting David Parry was probably a big influence as well, because he was, like, into Gnosticism, and that appealed to me as well. And then I joined one of the churches that he was involved in. We're now both in the Old Catholic and Apostolic Church. I don't really know if I can give you like an answer as to what happened there, It just happened. As I say, I was shown who Jesus was, and it made sense to me. So it opened that door for me. And, and then
A
that,
calling to you, right?
yeah, and then that, I suppose that door being opened, it allowed that, it shone that sort of light again. We've got that light symbolism there, but it let that sort of light in that hadn't been there before. And I began to see more of like the beauty within Christianity that I had been totally not opposed to, but just shut off from. I let it in. I allowed myself to see deeper than my I suppose my prejudices that were kind of stopping me from seeing that. And then it just went from there. But I think a big influence though was Mary. Mary has been a big influence because I felt that connection a lot before. And she had come to help me several times, in several different ways. And like in Notre Dame, when I was in Notre Dame, I was extremely ill and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I was just feeling really quite sorry for myself. And I saw an image of Mary. And it was like she was really looking at me. Now, this was just her image, but it was like she was really looking at me and just filling me with her sympathy. It's like she really had sympathy for me. And it was the most sympathy that I'd ever felt in my life. And it was so powerful that I started crying right then and there. And I had to, I sat down in one of the pews and just listened to the music. There was a choir singing, and they were singing in French, so I had no idea what they were singing. But I just listened to them until I felt better. And then I went out into, the sunshine, and I felt better. I felt okay. That sort of anxiety had been lifted. I still felt like, naturally worried, but not the way I'd felt when I went in. I'd felt more like depressed when I went in. And I didn't feel depressed anymore. I just was still like, this is a stressful situation, but I don't feel depressed about it,
Mm.
you
Well, is
know.
that like a sense of finding some purpose?
I think there was that as well. I think so. Yeah. I think it's important for everybody to have a purpose in life. And until you find your purpose in life, you kind of go around thinking that. why am I here? What am I supposed to do when I'm here? What's the point in me being here? And if you can't find the point in you being here, you will start to get depressed because you feel like you have no purpose.
Yeah, because then you start to feel like it feels like the earth becomes a prison for you, and you're just trapped in this place with nothing much really to do.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the point in it? But then I suppose that's where people with faith had the advantage over me. People had faith that they had a purpose and or that God had a purpose for them. Well, I didn't up to that point believe in God. So I didn't really know that I had any purpose, and nor did I have faith that I had any purpose.
Yeah, yeah. It seems as if you've opened your mind, could have probably biases that you just picked up on along the way, and allowed certain things in to come into your mind.
I think so. Yeah. Just allowed that just it was like spiritual healing, so there was like a spiritual healing took place as well. And I think sometimes when you are spiritually healed, it's enough to get you just enough to help you be physically healed as well. Because I think if you have a physical problem and you also have a spiritual problem or an emotional problem, but in this case, we're talking spiritual problem, then it's more difficult for you to get through something physical or emotional if your spirituality is not on a solid footing somewhere, anywhere. It doesn't really matter where, but if you have some kind of faith, then that can often help you overcome other difficulties.
Yeah, because you've got something to sort of fall back on. You're not just free diving through life, I guess. You're tied to something. You've got some support there with you as well.
It's the support, yeah, spiritual support. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think everybody needs that.
100%. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, your story's been excellent. It's been
Thank you
great.
very much.
I wanted to go for it in the pod, but do you want to plug your book and
Oh, yes, please.
give us some info on where to buy it? And I'll leave it all in the description for you below as well.
I don't know. Is that back to front?
No, that's perfect.
Is that the right way? Right, it's back to front on my screen. Okay, so this is Mystic Visions, and you can get that on Amazon. I'm going to be doing some book signings, trying to get them organized for a start. I thought I've got one that I'll be doing in a place called 23 Enigma, which is in the High Street in Glasgow, and it's a sort of a new age occult shop. I thought these places would be quite good to do book signings, although it's only been, I think there's only been 2 responses. I have to go out and see another place in Paisley. But I thought I would have more responses from new age shops for me to go in and do signings, but there hasn't been. So I'm just trying to get places to do book signings just now, but hopefully I'll be doing that soon.
Yeah, well, good luck with it all. I mean, this is your first
Thank
book,
you.
right?
It's my first book like that. I do have a book that I've edited called Nods to the Old Gods, which is the pagan poetry of the Romantic poets, that I brought out several years ago. and the other one is it's basically my dissertation, which was Erotic Magic of the Ancients.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
And
I did come across that book when I was
yeah, so that's the other one that I've got online. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon as well, but it's on Kindle.
all right, cool. I'll leave all the links in the show notes. Good luck with everything. It's been fantastic talking to you
Thank
today.
you. This is also available on audio as well for
Oh,
anybody
cool.
that needs that. Yeah.
Did you do the voiceover for it? Or?
I didn't. It was an English actor that was Philip Mantle got. I don't know who it was, but he's got a very nice voice anyway.
Well, apparently in the US, they prefer listening to audiobooks by English speakers.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because on one hand, I thought, should it have been a Scottish woman reading that out, or should it have been a Scottish man reading that out? But I do like the sound of it. It does sound good. That's well done. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. And I saw you've got the Jaws in the background there as well. I that's one of my favourite films.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely in my top 5, but I'm a proper film guy. So, and there's another one there in my top 5 too.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction. Yeah, that's a good one too.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Bye for now.
See you later.
Thank you. Bye.